Hey all, so we're back after an extended off season with the first season of this new tactic, Prowess Power. Obviously, we all know the story at this point. It was way overtuned. Now it's definitely a bit undertuned. We'll see if something changes before season 43. But for now, we have a relatively light season, which means deaths are going to be low and stress is probably going to be high. Going to be blunt about that. But we're starting off against Legion, and even in a season where the tactic might give us a little bit more room, we always need to be on our A game against them. They're very good. We have both beaten and lost to them in the past. It's usually something of a toss up. So we spent quite a bit of time planning this. Myself and the other main officer in BG3. New tactic always means new things. We both tend to check out a little bit as far as placements in the off season, and that means the first plan takes longer, and this was no exception. Talked over that first fight because y'all have heard me talk about Carl versus Terrax enough at this point. He good. So then we have this Weapon X. As usual, this one is the same basic theory. Getting the extra pause and the Mystic Dispersion from that quick Indestructible is super helpful in this fight. What's not super helpful is him throwing a medium, me thinking he was about to either back up or throw a heavy, and then his light attack catching me out of nowhere. So that was pretty unfun, but that kind of thing is exactly why I always use an indestructible boost against Wolverine, because even though it doesn't save me against the bleed damage, as you saw, a rank 5 Carl has enough health that I'm not going to bleed out, and then it just becomes, let's not compound that issue with some crits on top of it, and then it just becomes an issue of whether we're in Uru or Magma, hit him enough so that he falls over. Because he's going to regen, but the red numbers that we're doing are going to cut through that, and it doesn't take very long. We move on to Professor X here, and I'll say ahead of time, I don't play this all that well. The goal here is to do lots of parries and throw special twos, right? And specifically to do lots of parries and then switch over into the other, or basically switch back into Titan mode so we can keep building armors when he's in poison mode. But what that requires is, for one, me to notice when he does a second heavy back-to-back there. It also requires me to be really on top of my parries in the corner, which I was not, and which means that I should have spent the first part of this fight not just parrying, but probably also building some space by hitting his block, so that we didn't spend the entire time in the corner here. Also had a weird time against that special evade. That was not awesome. But the important bit is to get to the special 2 while that invulnerability's still up. That's what we were going for. The fact that we missed some parries is why we don't have 10 protocol charges yet. Go for another one, and I just miss it. So, yeah, I had some input things here, but I think a lot of it was me just not being super comfortable in the corner, honestly. So I'm not blaming all of that on the game, maybe 1 or 2 of them. But yeah, then we just get back to 10, we're in Eradicate, we throw the special 3, and this is the part that I think everybody always forgets about Nimrod, is that his special 3 is also very good. It's why you can take fights that are shock immune with him as long as you have a little bit more time, because there's so much burst damage on the special 3. It's improved by the energy vulnerability. It benefits from the attack increase you get from the armors in Eradicate. It is very good, and it closed out that fight without us using a special 2 at all. Moving on to this Rintrah here, this is a very good placement because there are, of course, very few answers to him that are immune to one or both of these debuffs. Carl is obviously not immune to shock, but is going to be okay. The general way that we approach this fight is that we try and keep our pauses up, which is easy when we're in Incinerate, but does require some light punishes of heavy attacks while we're in the shock mode, and we're going to try and knock him down as much as possible. I'm going to go ahead and intentionally push him red here because I know I still have the invulnerability boost from Professor... Or no, I added a new invulnerability boost, sorry. Third fight in a row with invul. But we knew that him throwing this special 3 here would clear all of his power, we wouldn't have to worry about blocking the special 2, and all that's fine. Now, I was not really ready for him to root us in the corner there. I just kind of missed that that was on the table. So we stacked up some ruptures here. Not ideal. We're knocking him down with heavies just to try and make sure his charges don't go too high. Like, we're fine. I'm not worried, although, you know, missing a parry like that is not awesome. I think I maybe have expected... No, because I didn't have any debuffs on me. So yeah, I must have just missed. Weird one. Anywho, we're fine because we have access to this regen. The regen is based on missing health. It's not going to top us up, but basically any fight with Carl that I take, I know that I can afford a bit of health loss as long as it's a fight where I'm going to be throwing a lot of specials like this. So note that we're not getting as many passive incinerates here as we might in other places because our defensive ability accuracy is being lowered, but this is still a really good fight. It would have been a good fight even without the invuln boost, it just would have been slower and I would have had to bait a bit more aggressively. That does give you a small chance of your forms falling off, which is why I did what I did, but just a really safe fight there even through Rintrah's 20% energy resistance. Moving on to Man-Thing, the challenge here is basically entirely Mystic Dispersion. We're not going to apply debuffs, so we don't trigger Conflictor. We are immune to both of the parts of this Hazard Shift node, and we are immune to Poison and Armor Break from Man-Thing. So that does mean that we don't get willpower from those debuffs, but the armor breaks are going to ramp us really quickly. His Unstoppable is going to go away instantly, so it's very easy to punish his heavies, and that's also more Mystic Dispersion. And so basically, as long as we keep baiting against him, as long as we keep baiting out these special 1s and special 2s, and don't eat special 3s, this is the simplest fight in the world. And there we go. Moving on, I am not taking Path 9 this war. That Jubilee is a big reason why, so congrats to Legion on that placement. But I already had Nimrod for Professor X, so that lined up well for this storm here. She definitely can get a bit spooky if the power gain is strong from the tactic. It's not right now, but she was one that I saw a lot of scary stuff from in the off-season. Because if you don't have power drain to control her Tempests, then the power that she gains from prowess can take her over bars of power to give her more prowess, which gives her more power, which takes her over more bars. You see how it cascades. But that is why we're using someone like Nimrod, because the number one thing that I wanted to do in assigning this fight was make sure it was somebody who had some kind of power drain. Because she doesn't have any prowess in her base kit if you turn off her Tempests, which power drain does. So there it is again, because we're in Eradicate. We don't stay in Eradicate because it does fall off, because funnily enough, she's not gaining enough prowess to keep us there. But we just throw this last special too. The power drain is keeping her from being shock immune, and we're good to go. Very, very clean fight with Nimrod, but even if he's banned, there are a number of other techs in the tactic especially who have access to power drain who do that very, very well. Now, Killmonger is somebody that we didn't bring an explicit counter for. I'm pretty sure they are intended to be a path splitter here. The thing is that Nimrod works quite well for Killmonger, and so I don't think that this 1-2 punch really makes sense if you're not banning Nimrod. Because basically his reliance on shock means he's not hitting that hard into Killmonger, and he's not taking that much reverb. It's a very safe fight. But what's an even safer fight is Carl versus Killmonger, because Most of your damage is the red numbers, which is not subject to reverb, and the reverb that does come back is physical damage, and so while we're in Uru, we're taking that much less. So we have taken some, and you see I hit into him at relatively high power there, which is something I normally don't do against Killmonger. But we go ahead and we get the refine, we get the regen. Again, it doesn't fully top us off, but it's just that much more. And we are not worried in the slightest. Throw that to try and push him over a bar here, because I was hoping that he would throw his special so that we activated reverb at a lower power threshold, but that's okay. You can see we literally lost 1% health from just deciding to go for it and throw the special regardless. Moving on, we have this Mojo here on node 53. I would say this is what we brought I-Bomb for, but it's not. I-Bomb is obviously there mainly to give Carl immunities, and there are a few other options that I might send to this over him, but I took Dex off before this fight, and that means that he's basically going to have complete control. We want to make sure Mojo doesn't get to 5 prompts, because turning off Dex does not make you buff immune. But as long as we do that, he answers everything else. I'm not having the best poison luck here, because remember there is a chance for poison on all contact, but eventually one does trigger, it turns off the stun shield, and that allows us to parry freely. If we parry heavy, we are benefiting from the stun vulnerability on this node, and the whole time our very long poisons are continuing to give us power. So yeah, there's just not much that we're worried about here. I back off after this one because with Mojo, you kind of want to pick and choose. You don't need to bother making every prompt fail, but when he's around 3 or 4, I try and pick prompts to get to fail. So like there with that one with the heavy, I kind of took my time, lined up a special attack because I didn't think he was likely to throw a heavy after that. I made sure I didn't throw a heavy. And that's just basically what you want to do against him if you're using either Dex off or a buff immune. Or sorry, Dex off or somebody who doesn't trigger Dex, like Quicksilver, or maybe even somebody like Mr. Fantastic. You don't have to fail all the prompts. Just pick ones that you know you can stop the AI from doing and bide your time. Because it resets all the way to 1 and that's all you need. So this is a Korg boss. Obviously, I took several Korg bosses last couple seasons during Planetary Endurance. I think this is going to be significantly easier than those because there's no more buffs to feed Opportunist, and so if I do get hit, the risk is that much lower. But he does potentially have some more power from me landing crits into him. But that's why I'm not going to bother trying to land crits into him. I don't think you're going to see any heavy cancels throughout this entire fight, because as long as I don't do that... See, there's 1 right there. But Korg has high enough crit resistance... I shouldn't have hit his block there. Korg has high enough crit resistance that I should land almost no crits with Absorbing Man, and then I'm just allowing my red numbers to do the work, and we don't have to worry about giving him any extra power, and it's basically just a vanilla Korg fight on this boss node. See, there's another crit, because they do get through sometimes. If you really wanted to not engage with the tactic at all, or maybe if the tactic was still in its overtuned state, I think you could turn off precision. But that is much more expensive, and I didn't think that it was worth it in the context of the lower power currently attached to this fight. So yeah, easier than last season. Obviously don't love getting caught by what felt like a surprise light attack to me, while Korg was unblockable and unstoppable, and I was trying to bait something out. But that's fine. That's what the Indestructible is for. It just means that I cannot mess up the Special 1 dexes after this. But luckily, I got a lot of practice the last couple seasons. And I'm not going to say that I have it 100% down, but I at least don't mess it up in this fight. Things are going well. Hazard Shift link is up. I hadn't mentioned that, but that is, of course, very important to this fight being this clean. It's allowing us to easily pause our forms without having to do double lights after baiting out Korg's heavies, which is the other option, and it does work. I've done it before, it's just spookier and you take more block damage, and it's also allowing us to hold on to more morph charges, so we've been able to heal a couple times. So that fight could go better, but as you can tell, still quite safe. I'm sure we'll see more Korg bosses, and I'll be taking that more often this season. Anywho, hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope First War with the new tactic is going well, and we'll be seeing more of these. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and take care.